So I write for the Philadelphia Tribune. I'm happy to be doing this article on you. I'm just going to
Okay.
be covering all the things that you've done. You're celebrating 25 years, and then also talk about the Roots Picnic and then the things that you do have coming up. So that's where I want to start. I just want to sing 25-year anniversary. Take me back to recording the album. What do you remember about that time?
Well, it didn't start out as an album. I was just recording songs. I didn't really plan on making an album. I didn't expect to be signed to Def Jam. I wasn't looking to be, a super international star or anything. Um, I was just trying to get some ideas out. I was working with my writing partner, Carvin Hagens, at the time at A Touch of Jazz. We're
Uh-huh.
actually working on some new stuff now too. So it's breaking because I'm just in a bad area and I'm traveling. So I'm sorry, if it breaks up. Carvin Hagens, me and him was working on songs. We recorded some songs. I didn't think much of it. Got a deal, and then out of nowhere, almost in less than a year, all the songs that I recorded that again wasn't trying to put an album together. That's why it's so interesting when people ask me questions about it. Is I don't really know what to tell you. I was just recording songs.
Yeah. Well, they were good songs.
No,
These weren't your
ultimately,
average.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, these were your average songs.
hmm
The music scene in Philly at the time, what was it like?
It was very vibrant. There was a lot of artists that had similar goals as far as trying to be their authentic selves in the music that they grew up listening to that inspired them and be representations of, me, myself included. It was very dense. It was a lot of camaraderie, even though we didn't all hang out together necessarily, but a lot of us knew each other and, we had respect.
So, Just Friends was your first single off that album that you didn't, that you weren't making, right? You were just making songs. But
hmm
it's become such a staple, and just still played to this day. It doesn't seem like it's been 25 years. When you were making the song, did you
Right.
think it was going to have such an impact?
Mm-mm. But I'm grateful that it did.
Why do you think people love this song so much?
I don't know. I think maybe because it was different from everything that they were hearing on the radio at the time. I started the song off beatboxing. That was a little unconventional at that time. Which is
Yeah.
why I like to present to people, often that when people categorize me or label me as R&B, I know that that's the label that people just are used to, and they can't kind of like think of any other label to categorize me as, um, because that just I don't know, that's just how people label things, I guess, and that's how the industry. That's a designation that the industry, the default designation that the industry has for the type of music that I make, I guess. But I always like to emphasize the fact that the first song that you heard from me, it starts off with a beatbox, which is very not R&B. It's a very hip hop thing. So me beatboxing on the song, which is what I used to do actually, which is how it got there. Beatboxing for MCs and just hanging around a bunch of rappers. I identify as hip hop soul, and have been for many, many, many years. Um, and the reason why I'm making this point is because I have interviews with people and they constantly asking me about R&B, and I'm like, I don't really know what to tell you about R&B because I've never been an R&B singer. You guys categorize me as an R&B singer, definitely through the direction of the music industry and the label, because that's just that's just what works, I guess. But I've never aspired to be. I never intended to be. I never consciously set out to be what people recognize or call an R&B artist or R&B singer. People get confused when they come to my shows because there's a lot of energy, it's a lot of hip hop and this going on, and they'd be like, "Where are the?" It's like, it's just way more to me than these love songs. Now
Yeah.
there are artists who do pursue that, and they do that intentionally. But I've never, I've never been an R&B singer. I've just constantly been presented as one, and it worked, and you guys love it. So I do my best to live up to those expectations, and I don't always meet those expectations, but what do you expect if that's never ever what I was trying to do? But just a little food for thought.
I hear a lot of artists say that though, like Liz, like I think SZA comes to mind really, where she's like, I'm a pop artist, you know. It happens to a lot of artists where, you know, we have this need to classify you guys, but the reality is you're all creatives inspired by
Well,
various types of music, you know?
right, but the reason why some of us feel the need to do so is because we're consistently dealing with challenging interactions with people who are consistently misconstruing us, and they get upset.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, you're upset because you refuse to accept what I'm telling you, and you just want to fit me within whatever place you want to fit me. And then when I don't fit, you feel away. Well, I told you I was never trying to do that. So
You
I
gotta be
can control
authentic
your
to who
side.
you are.
Yeah, but it's a challenge when people don't want you to do that. That's all.
Yeah. When you were beatboxing on Just Friends, did you get pushback in any way because it was unconventional?
No, I've
Love it.
never, no, I've never got anyone. Mm-mm.
So, Love, I just saw you at the Roots picnic and I was so captivated by the audience, you know,
Mm,
and how they interacted with your music. You being
mm.
on the stage, what was that like?
It was awesome being able to perform those songs in that city at that time. 25 years later, in a city that I cultivated the sound that I was able to perform the songs of on a main stage in Philly, and for it to be received under all the shenanigans, circumstances that was going on over there at the time. The weather was kind of crazy. The
Yeah.
fact that people still stayed and showed up and supported, like that's a really really big deal for me. And the fact that I was able to perform solely only songs from the first album, something I've never done, not even when I first released the album. I've never done that. So that was the first and only time I've ever performed only songs from one album. I just want to sing ever. So that was actually a milestone for me.
What surprised you? Because to your point, I've never heard some of these songs be sung live, you know, and what really surprised you about those moments?
Nothing was really surprising per se. Um, I was happy that people recognized them. Um, There some people in the front that knew every song word for word. That was pretty. What surprised me is the fact that I remembered a lot of those lyrics because I've never performed those songs, and they're like 20, 20, 25, 27 year old songs. I yeah, it's crazy. That if anything was surprising is the fact that I even remembered a lot of those lyrics. And some, I mean, I flubbed some of them, but it is what it is.
I love that. Speaking of love, the song, beautiful song. How do you look at that song 25 years later or 27 years later? I know you recorded it before you released it, but how do you look at that song now?
Uh, I don't know. I look at it as a very important song for my career. Um, Mostly because you guys, the audience members, the fans, the consumers, the supporters have made it that way. And not just that, the industry, the DJs, the program directors at the radio stations, um, like that was, people really got super behind that song. Um, and it's really because of the reaction that I got from those songs, from that album, was what facilitated my deeper appreciation for those songs. Like, I like those songs; they were cool. I recorded them and I felt good about them. But I never recorded before, so I didn't really have a context of what that really meant. I wasn't out doing a whole bunch of talent shows. I wasn't doing showcases. I wasn't performing for record labels and trying to get picked up. I didn't spend years and years and years, you know, cultivating my craft in front of audience members. So I got, I, I didn't know what any of that. I didn't understand the weight and depth of what I was doing was. There was no, because no one was a part of it except for my inner circle of people that I was working with at the time. So it was really fresh out. So everything that people usually get, on average, working their way up to success, I was getting a crash course of it day one. I started recording um for this album was songs that ultimately got put on this album at the top of 99. I got a record deal at the top of 2000. So there was no
Right.
time for development. So I was a deer in headlights most of the time for at least a good 5 years, not knowing what I was doing, not knowing what was going on, how to receive things, how to move, how to act, what to do with my hands, how to respond to people. I was still kind of like, pivoting away when people would pull up on me because I'm still, I was living on the streets, like bouncing from house to house. I didn't have a stable lifestyle, at the time. So I had a complete different, survival mindset. But then overnight, I'm this person that people know, and want to, get close to. And I'm like, why back up? What are you doing? So it
I
was,
was just gonna say, when you're from this area, you have this thing of personal space,
yeah,
and it's a hard thing to adjust to. Like, why are you so
yeah.
close to me,
So
right?
yeah, so I'm saying all of this to say that it was through the reaction and the response of the people that I started to fully appreciate what was going on with these songs because I didn't feel those ways because it was just a song that I recorded. I felt good about it because it sounded good and I liked the way that I sounded and I could show people like, here's what I can do, da da da. But I wasn't thinking, oh my God, this is the greatest song that I ever wrote. This song is going, kill the game. And I'm not thinking like that, like at all. It's you guys that helped me to understand, like, no, this is some real work that you did. Like, you might want to like pat yourself on the back for this. And it was like through the reaction and the history, or the timeline rather of people's reactions, and every time they bring it up, and I'm like, wow, this song or these songs like really impacted people in a way that I was not thinking about.
You make it sound so easy, but Love in particular, the
Oh,
lyrics are
it
so
wasn't easy.
beautiful
No,
and
no, 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 no. It
so
wasn't easy.
in depth.
No, I'm not trying to
Okay,
make it
all
sound easy.
right.
It's not easy.
That's what I'm
It's
okay.
not. That was not easy.
Writing
I'm
a
sorry if
song
that's
like
the
Love,
impression that
how
I
do
gave
you
you, but
write that? Like, I don't that you don't
well,
stumble upon that, you know?
well, I grew up in a very traumatic. I had a very traumatic upbringing, childhood trauma, all types of stuff. So, what people don't understand, that I find that people don't understand in my observation, is that they think it's a romantic song or they think that it's a gospel song. It's actually intentionally neither. It's actually, if anything, it's closer to therapy, really, because that was just my expression of I don't really understand what other people's interpretation of what people call love is, because when I run into other people's interpretation of love, it don't always feel like what they say love feels like, or what love is supposed to be, or whatever the case is. So I was really confused and kind of talking it out, trying to understand, what is this thing that everybody call love, and are we talking about the same thing? Like, that's where that came from. I wasn't talking about no girl. I wasn't talking about my heart being broken. I wasn't talking, to God and whatever. No, I was out. The concept was, if love was a person and you could have a conversation with love, how would that go? And that's why it
Mm,
starts. Love is so many things I got to tell you. Is what that's what it is. But people, they do what they do with it.
beautiful song. You wrote every
Thank
song on
you.
your debut album except for one, Settle for My Love.
Well,
How do you
technically, I wrote all the songs with my writing partner, Carvin Hagen. So I got to give him.
Right. But that's rare in today's landscape.
Mm.
So many successful people have a multitude of writers. What are your thoughts on that? Songwriters writing particularly R&B songs and not hip hop songs, ghost writers.
I think
How do you feel about that whole part of the business?
I think some people put too much emphasis on things that aren't really that deep and serious, and not to trivialize it or discredit or be dismissive of it. For instance, in hip hop, I think the concept, or the aspect of ghostwriters is a significant point, because in hip hop, it was really about you and your lyrics and your bars and your contribution to the game. That's just inherently embedded in hip hop culture. When you get up there and you get on the mic, it's not about what somebody else wrote. I don't want to hear what somebody else thoughts through your face and your mouth. Like, no, you say your thought, because that's just the nature of hip hop. It's about your bars. It's about your pen. It's about your mind. Now, if we're just talking about songs, that's something else. That's something else. Even in hip hop, if we're talking about a good song, cool. But when you want to have the discussion about being, somebody in somebody's top five or top 10 or whatever, We got to strip away all the assistants. We got to strip away all the modifiers. We got to strip away all the filters. We got to go direct to the source because that's just the nature of that sport. It's about you and your bars. When it comes to songs, just like anything else, you can't expect something to be great consistently with just one person. You don't build a house with one person. You know what I'm saying? You don't run a restaurant with just one person. Like, so I think people put too much emphasis on, this idea of, well, they got too much help. It's like, well, but it requires that, in order to get this product. Because if it's just one person, you're going to get the product that you get, but how many people is it going to really appeal to? But if you get many people, they can weigh in and they can add ideas into it that can be, you can cast a wider net, and you can be more appealing to more people. Now some people have the ability, to produce a product that is the equivalent of a product being made by multiple people. Some people are just gifted that way, you know. But then that only lasts but for so long because it's heavily dependent on the wave and the trend of the industry. Because I'm
Yeah.
sure there's a thousand, it's a ton of, great songwriters, but there's no market for that sound. There's no market for that vibe, But the song is great, but it's a good luck mission trying to get it out there in the wild and, pushed to the forefront. So, you have a lot of amateurs with a lot of opinions about professionals. And it's just really confusing the game, in my personal opinion, and my humble opinion. So I think that this conversation about a bunch of people writing a song, do you like the song? Okay. Like, just I would encourage you to just be grateful as opposed to critiquing and nitpicking it. I can understand the conversation from this side, um, logistically, the industry conversation and vetting people for their worth and merit and trying to award them with all of these, so-called awards or whatever, and to track their success in the way of, these are the people that you go to in order to get a certain product. Cool. But on that side, the consumer, I don't know how big of a dog you have in this fight. You know, what is getting you the best product that you are willing to invest in, pay for, show up to the show, share, talk about, post with, put into your life and just generally consume,
Love it.
because if we're doing that, then we should do that in every industry, because you can't cherry pick when you want quality or when you don't want quality. Like, that's just really confusing to me,
Mhm.
but I don't know. I just think that conversation, I don't know. I think that there's a place and time for it, and it is only really significantly relevant to a certain demographic of people, really the people that work within that industry. Everybody's an expert now, because they got a camera and a microphone. So it's just really interesting.
Right. You're performing at the upcoming Black Music Month concert at the Dell as part of Wow Wow Welcome America. How important is this moment that we're still having a Black Music Month concert?
I have so many perspectives on that topic. Um, Like, for instance, like, why should our Black music be designated to a month? I know, I understand the concept of putting aside time to significantly celebrate it, but Black music should be celebrated year round. You know what I'm saying? Like, like Black history or anything, Black for that matter. However, I do, in context, I understand that it's important to highlight. So I don't want to be dismissive about that. So, like I said, I have many views about that. But
Yeah.
the fact that we can come together in a moment and celebrate in a festival, I think it's a good thing. It's a great thing, and I'm honored to be a part of it.
R&B invitation tour with Joe and Eric Benet. How was that?
Oh, that was awesome. I was honored to be on stage with Joe and Eric. I looked up to both of them. I, listened to their music for super many years. Super heavy in rotation for many years. I was able to communicate that to them, and we were able to um, put in good work. People showed up. It was a successful tour. Um, especially in a climate where there's a lot of cancellations and things like that. I think we probably missed maybe one or two shows, you know, um, due to unforeseen or uncontrollable circumstances. We were even able to make up one, you know what I'm saying? And people showed up. So it was cool. I was, grateful to be a part of that. And I look forward to being a part of um, uh, tours and situations like that moving forward. Because I think there's still a market for it. There's just a way to do things. And whoever the people that handled that situation, that tour, in my opinion, they handled it really, really well. And we were able to reach as many people as we possibly could during that run. So it was an honor.
I hear you have an album on the way.
I
Anything you
do,
can
actually.
say about that?
Yeah, it's actually the sequel to the album I just released a couple years ago called Victims and Villains. So fully 100% produced by Hit Boy,
Right.
produced out in Cali. For those who don't know, I'm actually in Cali. I was just mastering it. So that's what I can say. Literally, I mastered the album last night. Well, worked with a mastering engineer to get it mastered so that I can submit it and hopefully get it released maybe in August, earliest August, maybe latest September. We're trying to shoot for that. It was supposed to be earlier in the year, but so much has happened that I can't even get into right now. That kind of pushed it back. But I'm grateful that I'm still able to get it done and released to you guys. Also fully produced by Hit Boy, and for the first time, is I have features on almost every song.
Wow. What
Yeah.
features are we talking?
So yeah, you're gonna have to get the album in order to know that.
I
I will say that
what
what I will say is that it's mostly rappers because I feel it's important for me to consistently establish the point to people that I am a hip hop soul artist and not an R&B artist. I'm R&B adjacent, I guess. I just want people
right.
to really,
Uh,
get what they're, I guess I think the onus is on me to help people lock into exactly what they should expect to get versus expecting what they want and not getting it, not realizing that that was never the assignment, you know.
so what's the official title of the album?
Victims and Villains 2.
Around
Victims and Villains 2. It's the sequel to
2.
to Victims and Villains, the other one that I just
Yeah.
released. So we have Victims and Villains, and now we have Victims and Villains 2. It's like a movie. This is the sequel.
Thank you for your time, music. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
you.
All right, I
Thank you for
appreciate
the
you too.
amazing music, and we look forward to your upcoming album. And I'll see you at the Dell for the Black
Thank
Music
you.
Month concert.